Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Horror Appraisal.
He's Sam.
And he is Evan. We got a good one for you tonight. We're doing another review of a film in the Tom Savini series. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about?
We're talking about the great slasher from 1980 with the incomparable Joe Spinell and the unapologetic Tom Savini doing effects. We're talking, of course, about the wonderful slasher Maniac.
Maniac is one of the craziest slashers you'll ever see.
Absolutely, man. It's got a zany kind of energy. It's all about a batshit crazy serial killer. That's an oversimplification.
Nobody portrays batshit crazy like Joe Spinell, and I think that's because he probably was crazy.
I think so too.
God rest his soul. I'm sorry he's dead. He would have made some really great stuff.
We talked very briefly about this film a couple years ago when we started our top 5 for the 80s every year, because Maniac was our number one film for 1980, and I don't remember how much into detail we went. I haven't seen that video in forever.
It feels like The Fog was number one. That it's coming back to me.
Maybe it was. It's all coming
Friday
back.
Friday the 13th was number 3. Maniac was 2. And
Maniac was in the
1.
top 5 of 1980. Whatever.
But that says a lot.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really weird stuff about Maniac. It takes place in New York at the end of the disco era, because that's what everyone's listening to in this movie.
Awkward times.
The things that I really like about this film are its themes of isolation and loneliness.
Desolate?
Yeah, desolation. And of course, the first really, I think it's fair to say that the first half of the film, Frank, that's the character played by Joe Spinell, Frank is really kind of a creature of solitude. It's all about him finding his victims and how he goes about it, and how he it's kind of like Frank's feet never even touch the ground. He glides through this world. He's in New York City.
He's all alone.
He's all alone. But the contrast is, he's in one of the most bustling cities on the planet, and but it's still got that feeling of isolation and alone. It's like he's moving through the world alone. It's like he actually has kind of control over this world he controls events almost, or situations. After
seeing the end of the film, it makes me feel like when you're watching the rest of the movie, maybe he's not really that alone. Maybe there's all kinds of people around. He just doesn't notice.
Yeah, that's actually I think that's a really good way to look at it, because we're watching this film through his eyes kind of anyway. So it's really his perception equals reality. So I think that's a really good way to put it. Because like I said, for me, just watching it, I was saying to Sam, it really is amazing, like how alone he seems in this movie. You might as well be watching a guy alone in a castle on top of a cliff. It felt like just as isolated, but it's him in New York City.
Well, and this is the old New York City. It's not the new.
It's the old trashy New York City.
It's not the new safe haven bubble for people that can't face the real world that New York currently is. New York was a nasty, filthy, crime-filled piece of crap city. It was nasty, and it had a high crime rate. People died like crazy.
Yeah, but then they got Ninja Turtles, and then they made it all better.
I thought that was L.A.
No way, dude. That's New York.
It was New York. It was
Statue of Liberty, biatch.
Yeah, it was New York.
All right.
Anyway, Maniac is about a guy who was abused by his mother and who was locked in a closet because she was a prostitute, and he had to hear her have sex. That's the biggest summary. He kills women in the name of his mother, and he has conversations with his mother.
Yeah.
And it's all because he hates her and he loves her.
I don't think it's fair for you to say that he got locked in a closet because she was a prostitute. I think there are a lot of prostitutes out there who wouldn't abuse their children that way.
But she was it was because she was a prostitute, though.
I know. I was just effing with you.
Yeah, I know.
But I bet like all he ever had for dinner was pizza and pancakes, because he was in that closet so much as a kid.
This movie starts
at
about 90 miles an hour and ends at about 100,000 miles an hour.
Yeah,
it really does.
You really
not let up.
You hit the ground running with this, as he kind of looks for some victims on a beach.
Yeah, he kills a couple on the beach to start with, and he wakes up and you see his ugly mug, like sweaty. Looks like
Joe Spinell looks like a glazed donut with a mustache.
And we were talking about that. The third kill in this film is a young prostitute that he scalps.
He strangles. Does he strangle?
Yeah,
he strangles her first, and she's got nothing to look at but his big, meaty pork pie of a face. God, he's not an attractive man.
And
Ugh.
I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead, but knowing Joe Spinell's lifestyle,
an ugly guy.
Knowing his lifestyle, I guarantee he was coked up when he was filming this stuff. So he was probably really nasty.
I don't know. I mean, we can't know that for sure, but man, this guy had an energy about him. He had to have, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was on something. Plus, granted, too, the era in which it was late 70s, early 80s, we're in New York. But, that being said, I want to talk.
We're talking about Tom Savini.
I want to talk about Tom. I want to revisit a couple things for Maniac, but let's talk about Tom Savini and the whole connection with this. So, Tom Savini, of course, had just come off of doing Dawn of the Dead with George Romero.
Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th was happening for him at this.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when.
The same year.
Was it the same year?
I don't know if 1980.
Oh yeah,
I don't know which came first, but I mean, he was bustling.
Yeah, he was busy. He was a busy guy. But man,
when he was talking in that YouTube video, there's a video on YouTube called Tom Savini on Maniac.
Look it up.
And he said,
rather enlightening.
He said he felt really fortunate because it was Dawn of the Dead and then Friday the 13th and then this. And Bill Lustig, the director, gave him $5,000 really for a budget. So there was not much of an effects budget. But my God, you go ahead and say what you were going to say. I just wanted to get that kind of up there up front.
No. I wanted to make sure we talked about Mr. Savini's effects. One of the things we talked about is this film has absolutely the best, blowing up of a head ever, hands down. Like if we had a top 10, video for best head explosions, that doesn't mean whether by shotgun blast, head destruction. Sam and I think would both pick the scene in Maniac for our number one.
If you made it head destruction, you would also have to include the shopping market, the grocery store. What is that movie?
The Intruder.
The bandsaw through the head.
Yeah,
that's a close. I mean, for as far as effects goes,
sure,
it's this head explosion and that bandsaw scene.
That's true, but I think other than, of course, in that the shotgun blast to the head scene, Tom Savini did some other really cool stuff on this. Like, of course, when Frank, Joe Spinell's character from the film, as he scalps his women, they didn't use like a mold cast of someone's face. They actually, used the real actress, and they put makeup so that in essence he could scalp her on camera. I mean, it was that little attention to detail that just made it,
Well, they did it in two
realistic.
shots. They did it in two steps. They would kind of cut it, and then they would go back and put a fake scalp on there and pull it off.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's that attention to detail that we miss today.
But yeah, so Maniac stands in the annals of Tom Savini's legacy as, one of these really great effects films. He didn't have a lot to work with. He what did he say? He had maybe a $5,000 budget for all of his effects.
Yeah, he did two. He had a mask of himself that he used for the head explosion, and he did a cast of Joe Spinell's head for when
Tom Savini really is kind of the MacGyver of special effects and the Wizard of Gore.
He knows how to do it cheap too. You can always tell when you're looking at a Tom Savini gut stab because it's in. It waits a second, and then blood pours out, and it looks really real.
I like how he talks about how they filled the head that they blew up, filled it with like seafood and rubbers that had a bunch of blood, like fake blood in it. That boy is just ingenious.
Quick thing about that head scene, he in the middle of I'm reiterating, but you may not have seen the documentary and where Tom Savini's talking about that head scene where he shoots his own head through a car windshield. But in the middle of New York City, where you get 5 years in prison for discharging a weapon, he said, he filled up his own head prosthetic with, he said, shrimp cocktail.
It was like shrimp and like food, condoms with fake blood in it. It was just apple cores, yeah.
Yeah, he fills it up with that. And Tom Savini, in real life, is on this hood of the car, shoots through a windshield with a real shotgun.
That's what surprised me most, is that he actually shot through a windshield.
And he wore goggles to protect his eyes.
Right.
The goggles, they do nothing. But if he had missed the head and, messed up the windshield, and that's it.
Yeah, you would have screwed up the shot.
Probably.
Now, granted, it's a shotgun and it's not going that far. It's just going a few feet. But that what if you screwed that up once?
Based on the hole in the windshield, I think he used a slug, and that required some accuracy.
Yeah.
And a windshield is not exactly soft. There's a big chance of ricochet and deflection off of that.
Basically, what we're getting down to is a really cool effect that they would never have the balls to do now.
And they dumped the car in the Hudson River.
Yeah. So they wouldn't get caught. That's a pretty great story. So we've established Maniac as a great Tom Savini effects film. A couple things that I thought were quite interesting. I actually am such a dork. I took notes. I've seen this movie quite a few times with you, but it seems like maybe it's been a couple years at least since we've seen it.
Our good friend John McComas loves this film.
Loves Maniac. We need to make sure we send him a shout out. One thing that I really like about the dynamic, we talked about how like the first half of the film, Frank is really a character who he continues to live inside his own head, but really the second half of the film, Frank comes more alive because he finds Anna, the photographer, and
who is Carolyn Monroe, a really famous actress.
Yeah, played by the beautiful Carolyn Monroe. And he really comes alive seeing her. Now, of course, he wants to make her one of his victims, but he can come off as the whole film up to this point, he's been very nuts. He's been very crazy, and you kind of wonder, that you kind of don't think that guy could ever pretend to wear a mask of sanity. But with Anna, he is somehow able to put on that mask of sanity so he can get close to her and do what he needs to do.
He's truly psycho, and Joe Spinell delivers. And I kind of see this as like a parallel maybe to his own real life.
Right. Well, I kind of see it as perhaps he sees some kindredness in her as a kindred spirit, because he has that conversation with her where she's talking about being a photographer and taking pictures of people and trying to make them live forever by trying to capture people on film. And she asks him something to the extent of, can he understand? And of course he does actually completely understand. Frank is interested in achieving this immortality with his victims, because after he's killed, he places garments from the victim as well as the scalp that he's taken. He nails the scalp to the mannequin, thereby ensuring that
he keeps them all in his bedroom watching him,
thereby ensuring that they will live forever with him.
But she crosses a line with him, because when he's talking about his ability to keep somebody his models forever, she says that's impossible. You can't do that even in a photograph.
Oh, I'll show you.
And she crosses the line when she says that.
Yeah, Frank disagrees.
He does. I do want to comment. This slasher has one of the most tense, suspenseful scenes that ends up being a murder ever, and it's the subway kill.
Oh yeah.
It is probably 10 minutes in length. This nurse is pursued by Frank. She is a very great actress. She delivers honest.
She was believable. I mean, I believed her terror.
I thought she was going to be killed.
I thought she was going to puke.
She gets a band. Like, he walks up behind. She thinks she's good to go. She's looking at herself in the mirror, and Joe Spinell, Frank, comes up behind her with a freaking bayonet. And he's yelling at her. You really can't hear what he's saying. It's muttered and covered up with loud music.
Oh,
And he sticks it up her back and out the front, and it's really violent.
Yeah, this is Maniac. I know you might not, believe it by the title, but Maniac is an exceptionally violent film. It's not surprising in that aspect. I really like the film. I think it was very gutsy for its time. Gutsy not being a pun. One other thing I kind of want to talk about with Maniac, just as far as effects wise, I really like the scene where he's at his mother's grave, and of course the classic hands coming out of the grave thing. I don't know why. It wasn't necessarily anything original or something that I didn't expect, but I just really like how it looks.
It's very symbolic.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Well, it is the end measure of his craziness, I think, and it's the end of the line for him.
Yeah,
in a way. And when you find him back in his bedroom and he's trying to sleep, he's overcome with, I guess, shame and guilt of punishing these women for being like his mother. And they haven't really
his perception of them being like his mother. Anyway.
They haven't really been like his mother. They're just. He's portraying in this thing that he's projecting onto them, and when it's just at this point you're still escalating, and then you have this remarkable climax. And I won't say anything about it.
The thing is about Frank is a guy who's in so much pain, and it really is better for Frank. It would be way better for Frank to die, and it would be way better for the world to die. And it's not just the world; it's also this is a person that absolutely needs to be put out of their own misery,
and everybody else's, because he's hurting people and. There are a few films. There are, like, I don't know, Hellraiser or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is one of those films that really affects me. I look at it and I'm like, man, this is very raw and wrong.
Yeah.
There's another kill where he's on top of this girl in bed and he tells her, he's talking about how he's going to keep her forever and she can't ever leave. And he said, I'm not going to hurt you, but he's got a knife to her right here in the sternum, and he says, "You can't ever leave, or you can't leave."
Yeah, you can never leave. Something, whatever. That's the extent.
Again, and then he pops the knife into her.
Yeah,
and he's on top of her, like kind of gyrating and stuff.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. I don't know. It's just I would never want to meet anyone like Frank. The weird thing is, we probably meet people like Frank more often than we'd want.
I think that's the terrifying part.
That actually is part of the terrifying part of the terror of Maniac, I believe.
The last comment that I really need to get out is that I would have loved to have seen Maniac 2. They were working on Maniac 2 when Joe Spinell passed away with drug-related problems. He had a heart attack, I think, maybe an OD. There's not a lot of details out there specifically about his death, and that's probably for the best. Tom Savini, we cannot wait to meet him at Scarefest in Lexington. It's the last weekend of September into October. They did a really heck of a job on bringing him in, I think.
Yeah. I really don't have much else to say either. They did remake this film 2 or 3 years ago with Elijah Wood. Maybe it's been a little longer. I tried to watch it actually when it came out, and it was kind of like it was all his POV. Couldn't get into it. I felt like they could have made a movie but not tried to make it a remake of a more superior film. So
Maniac's one of those films where you're like, why would you need to remake this?
Yeah, Maniac, for you slasher fans out there who've never seen or heard of Maniac, maybe you've seen the very iconic art, of course, which is the guy holding a scalp and the on the poster, the tagline, I told you not to go out tonight.
I warned you not to go out
tonight. But I absolutely, Sam and I recommend Maniac to those of you who haven't seen it, and those of you that have, that maybe haven't for a while. It'd be worth another viewing at this point.
Absolutely.
All right.
We will try to get in another 1 or 2 more Tom Savini reviews before we go to Scarefest to meet him. We thank you for watching. As always, press that subscribe button.
And follow us on Twitter at The Horror App.
We love to talk back. If you comment on something, we always talk back. We're a very open book. Anyway, I'm Sam.
I'm Evan.
We appreciate you watching. Thank you.
All right, you guys have a great one. Watch out for Frank.
I don't care if it's spontaneous or not. I mean, we're going to do a test because we're going to record Maniac. It's the first time you see Joe Spinell.
Yeah.